So we've talked about what we can and can't control. We've also talked about things that we learnt as a result of the last lockdown. In this video, I want you to think about things that are different for you now compared to before the last lockdown. So what things are different for you now than they were at the beginning of the last lockdown? Let me share with you 7 things that are different for me since the last lockdown. Since the last lockdown, I know 3 people who have lost their lives to COVID-19. And I know 6 more people who have had it really severely. Luckily they survived and are recovering. Don't think it's something that you recover from quickly or easily. But yeah, I know 3 people who lost their lives to it, and I know 6 people who have had it severely but thankfully recovered. That's different. That wasn't 6 months ago. What else is different is that I now only work with people online. Before lockdown, before the last lockdown, 90% of my clients were hoarders, and I visited them in their home. That stopped at the beginning of March because I felt it wasn't safe to be going into their homes, especially given that I suspected and still suspect that my husband and I had it back in January. So I chose to stop doing that at the beginning of March. Now I wouldn't be able to anyway. Well, I might be able to, but it's not the right thing to do, in my opinion. So for me, that is very different. I only help people online. Third thing that is different now compared to just before the last lockdown, I no longer go to my local gym that is literally just around the corner. If I step outside my office, I could see the roof of the gym I used to go to. I don't go there anymore. So what's very different for me is that I actually turned my dining room into a home gym. My husband and I bought a home gym equipment so that we could continue to exercise, because our health is very important. Like I've mentioned in a previous video, my husband and I are both self-employed. If we get sick and we can't work, we can't pay our bills. So we have got to make sure that we stay well, and our home gym is part of that. It is also now part of my losing the lockdown weight, the 2.5 stone that I put on during lockdown. So that's very different. Yeah, don't have a dining room now, have a home gym room instead. But of course, because social distancing is part of the way to not get the virus, we're not likely to have anybody around for dinner for at least 6 months. So we don't need a dining room table, so we got rid of it. What else is different since between the last lockdown and this one? Well, I now only go to the supermarket or to get my hair cut. I don't go anywhere else. I have been to an outdoor cafe, but I went there because I knew I could sit outside. So I don't socialise. I don't. It sounds quite sad, actually, doesn't it? I have been to the pharmacy, and I went to one on a retail park, not the one in town, because bigger space, wider aisles, I felt safer. So supermarket, to get my hair cut, which I've had cut twice, and to the pharmacy. Those are the only places that I now go. That wasn't the same before the last lockdown. The 5th thing that is different for me compared to before the last lockdown, I now pay my cleaner not to come to our home and clean. she's got a good job. That was my choice because I feel that it's the morally, I feel that that's the right thing to do. As long as I am able to pay her, I feel that I should pay her. It is not her fault that she cannot come into our home. I'm sure other people are having their cleaners go into their home and clean, but I would not feel comfortable having her come into our home, even if we were not in the home at the time. Even if my husband came down here into my office at the end of the garden and she had the house to herself, if she's going into other people's homes, I don't want her coming into our home, because who knows what she could unintentionally have picked up in other homes. Again, it comes back to the fact that I cannot afford to get the virus and not be able to work. So I now pay my cleaner not to come and clean. Sounds crazy. We're going to look back on this in decades and go, really? But no. The sixth thing that is different for me compared to the beginning of the last lockdown is, you're going to think I'm crazy. I have now bought more tops and shirts than bottoms. Because due to video calls and recording videos, I only need my top half to look smart. So I more or less lived in, I call them tracky bottoms, tracksuit bottoms and leggings and flip-flops for the last 6 months. I did wear a pair of shoes last week and got terrible blisters because I've essentially been living in flip-flops for the last 6 months. That is very different. I used to wear quite a lot of dresses, and now it's all about the top. So that's definitely different. And I think what's also different for me now compared to the beginning of the last lockdown is a stark realization that I actually can't control other people's behaviour. I can only control my own. This links in with what we were talking about in the previous video about what we can and can't control. I can't control other people's behaviour, and I am shocked by some people's behaviour. Some people that I know and respect and thought were like-minded, turns out that they're not. They're not following the guidelines. They are not respecting boundaries. They are not socially distancing, and that's been a shock. And I'll be honest, a disappointment. People that I thought were like-minded, it turns out that they're not, and I find that quite sad. It's almost like the Brexit thing. Dare I mention Brexit? When Brexit was happening here in the UK, there was this very much, you don't really say which side you're on, but certainly amongst my group of friends, it was okay to say which side you were on, because you would have had a rationalisation that made sense, and nobody was wrong. Everybody was right because of their opinion. The trouble with this pandemic and this virus is that not everybody's right. There are real simple basic medical facts. And so there is almost like a brick wall between the different opinions. We are not going to get through this just by sheer determination. It is not, in my opinion, like the war, because during the war you could have social gatherings, you could meet other people, you pulled together, you supported each other. Yes, absolutely, but you didn't have the physical distance during the war. You didn't need to be 2 meters apart. This is very, very different. So realizing that you can't control other people's behavior, but that their behavior could affect you, and that they could be putting you at risk if their behavior is different. to your own. You know, that's quite a stark realization, and that's very different. I didn't have that opinion or view at the beginning of the last lockdown. Sorry, bit of a pull you down. So again, I really would encourage you to just take a moment to think about what things are different for you right now compared to just before we went into lockdown the first time. Yeah, just notice, get this learning and feedback of that was then, this is now, what's different. Okay, I hope that's been helpful. I shall see you in the next video.